Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown and State Attorney General Doug Gansler sparred over the rollout of the state health exchange. Each made a number of claims.
This is literally the one thing that he's been in charge of, that he's managed or he's led since he was lieutenant governor, and it's been an unmitigated disaster.
But the fact is, the governor appointed Brown to a number of leadership positions on a variety of issues. He coordinated the influx of military personnel in response to base realignment. He led the fight to reform laws and increase criminal penalties as a member of the Family Violence Council.
I reorganized the leadership at the exchange. The executive director left. We refocused the vendors, fired those who didn't perform as promised, including IBM.
The lieutenant governor appears to take sole responsibility for turning the health exchange around. But whether he acted alone cannot be determined. Last December, Brown told Jane Miller all the reports he received from the exchange prior to the rollout indicated everything was okay.
At no time did the reports say that we've got a problem here.
Doug Gansler accused Brown of jumping on the bandwagon of abolishing the state's death penalty law.
It's curious that he says he's fought for years, because every time the repeal of the death penalty bill came up while he was a delegate in Annapolis, other delegates signed up to sponsor the bill, and the lieutenant governor was nowhere to be found until he was running for governor.
According to General Assembly archives, Delegate Anthony Brown co-sponsored 3 death penalty-related bills, including moratorium legislation. During the debate, Brown brought up an ethical issue in Gansler's professional past.
He was the only state's attorney in the history of Maryland reprimanded by the highest court for misconduct.
This claim is true. Gansler did take on a judge who said an 11-year-old girl who was raped by an internet sexual predator that it takes 2 to tango, and that it was her fault for responding to his emails.
The Court of Appeals then reprimanded me for being a public official, publicly reading a public charging document at a press conference with the police. I wear it as a badge of honor.
Gansler went on the attack about the state of economic affairs.
The people of Maryland just can't take it anymore.
Gansler claims 76% more people are unemployed since the lieutenant governor came to office. Economist Anibar Basu says the number is actually 61. Gansler claims 46% of Baltimore City males don't have work. The statement is too vague to check. Do these include those not looking, teenagers, retirees?
On Nonpartisan.
It's not easy to find common ground among the 3 Democrats running for governor until you ask whether they support the idea of a new tax known as the VMT, or Vehicle Miles Traveled. Intended to cut vehicle emissions, the more you drive, the more you'd pay. Ask whether they'd support such a tax. All 3 Democratic candidates, Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown, Attorney General Doug Gansler, and Delegate Heather Mazier, answered no.
Imagine what these guys could do with $261 million.
Gansler used it to go on the attack, saying, thanks to leaders like Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown, middle-class Marylanders have already been squeezed by 40 straight tax increases, including the gas tax. Before enacting yet another tax, I would prefer to see the state reduce vehicle emissions, Gansler went on, by supporting green projects like electric car charging stations, something I've championed as Attorney General.
We have to have funding ideas for phase 2.
Delegate Heather Mazier said infrastructure and transportation needs are far from met in our state, and this could be an innovative approach. However, our current regressive tax code puts too much burden on the middle class, and this would add to that burden, she went on. Mazier did say she'd support a study on the impact a VMT tax might have on the middle class.
Here's what we're going to do, Jane. Instead of doing a drive-through interview, okay?
A drive-through?
A drive-through interview. You know, like when you go through the McDonald's.
No. The lieutenant governor said no. This option would be a non-starter in a Brown-Ullman administration. I do not see the need to raise any taxes, he said, in the foreseeable future. And I'm committed to a comprehensive review of Maryland's tax code. The poll asked if you could leave Maryland, would you? 47% answered yes, putting Maryland 3rd on the list of states residents most want to flee.
On Nonpartisan.
So our question to the 3 Democrats running for governor, what 3 things would you do to counter that discontent? Delegate Heather Mazier responded, cut taxes for 90% of Maryland families, guarantee a living wage, and invest in infrastructure. Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown said Maryland needs to build on its record in crime reduction and education. His 3 points, a 5-point jobs plan, a universal pre-K plan, and investment in transportation. Attorney General Doug Gansler uses the Gallup poll in campaign speeches. He calls its results painful. His fix, grow small business, bonuses for teachers in underserved schools, and an income tax credit for most Maryland families. None of the Democratic candidates disputed the poll's findings. All 4 Republican candidates cited the same thing to keep people from leaving the state. lower taxes at the top of the list for each. I'm Jane Miller, WBAL TV 11 News.
This is the most deceitful, most dishonest campaign that I have ever witnessed in my entire life.
Republican Larry Hogan called Democratic opponent Anthony Brown a liar.
Each of Anthony Brown's campaign ads are completely false, and they're filled with absolute lies.
Brown's TV ads zero in on social issues. Hogan says he personally opposes abortion, but since the matter has been legally settled in Maryland, he will not, as governor, try to roll back the law.
Anthony Brown's running an ad that says that I oppose a woman's right to choose, even in the case of rape and incest. That is an absolute lie. It's not my position now. It's never been my position in my entire life. Here's the facts. The facts are nothing will change on abortion with me as governor.
The same Brown ad claims Hogan is against background checks for firearm purchases. It's in reference to his opposition to sweeping gun control laws passed last year that included increased scrutiny. Hogan supports instant background checks tied to the federal system.
Who is Larry Hogan?
Hogan contends the Brown campaign also misrepresented his views on pre-K expansion. He favors it, but not until a funding source is identified. He says it's not true that he'd rather give corporations a $300 million tax break than provide pre-K. But for the first time, Hogan says he wants to reduce the corporate income tax rate from 8.25 to 6%. And Hogan contends he never supported increases in college tuition, as another Brown ad claims.
And quite frankly, I think it goes to the core character of a person. If he's willing to blatantly lie throughout this campaign, how can he be trusted in public office?
Brown is not backing down. The state party stationed outside the Hogan press conference gave reporters bullet points backing up Brown's ads. Staffing included a video tracker. The Brown campaign responded to Hogan saying in part, Hogan is having problems with reality, so he's trying to distract and hide from his own words. Hogan is demanding that Brown, in his words, take responsibility and pull down the false and dishonest ads. The Brown campaign stands by the ads and responded with another dig at Hogan's position on abortion. Quote, it is clear Larry Hogan doesn't trust women to make their own health decisions. Hogan should be worried that voters will reject his conservative agenda as they learn the truth, end quote. Reporting from the studio, David Collins, WBAL TV 11 News. All that's left for the imagination is to add horns and a pitchfork to a darkened photo of Larry Hogan. The picture, which eventually lightens to reveal menacing eyes, is used against a red background matched with a music bed that connotes mystery. The latest political ad from the Anthony Brown campaign for governor is twice the length of previous ones. And for a solid minute, attempts to make voters believe Hogan is hiding his positions on issues critical to Maryland's future.
I need your help.
On the campaign trail, Hogan focuses on economic issues such as high taxes and what he calls Maryland's unfriendly business climate. He frequently makes claims that Brown simply wants to change the subject.
He's unable to defend his 8-year record of failure.
Brown's ad primarily cites opinions from newspaper editorial boards. It points out a lack of policy detail on Hogan's website, and it is thin on substance. Brown has released reams of policy papers, but what's missing are details on how he would pay for many of them.
In fact, he's telling you that he's not going to raise taxes. That's just not true.
Hogan only recently revealed his target to reduce the state corporate income tax.
I think the rate should be 6%, which is what Virginia is, which is what New York is.
But he hasn't outlined a time frame, how he'd do it, how much of a revenue hit the state would take, or how he'd deal with the money lost. The ad questions Hogan's stand on the environment. Hogan pledges to eliminate the rain tax and instead address sediment and other pollution problems flowing from the Conowingo Dam. The ad suggests Hogan has no position on education. Brown's been touting using casino money to expand pre-K.
I support universal pre-K. I've also said we simply can't afford it right now.
Hogan blasts Brown's leadership in the state's health exchange rollout. Hogan would have gone with the federal system. Brown's ad answers its own question with this conclusion. Hogan did say that on a radio program, but not in the context of a motive.
Our economic focus and our bipartisan message talking about these important issues that most Marylanders are concerned about has been resonating with Maryland, with Marylanders everywhere.
David Collins, WBAL TV 11 News.
And that brings us to the first debate between the two party-affiliated gubernatorial candidates. 11 News' David Collins had a front row seat and joins us in the studio with more on the very feisty exchanges and a bold campaign promise. David?
Well, Stan, Democrat Anthony Brown repeatedly pledged, if elected governor, he would not raise taxes.
When you say that
you cut area, $100 million rounding area?
I'm sorry, gentlemen. But
it was a spirited debate that produced a bold campaign promise.
There will be no new taxes in the Brown-Ullman administration.
The last time that you said, well, there's not going to be any taxes, we don't foresee any taxes in the future, was in the last election, when you and Martin O'Malley said exactly the same thing. And then you raised 40 taxes in a row.
Larry, you and I stand in two completely different places.
In their first general election debate in the race for governor, the candidates clashed. Hogan promised to eliminate the rain tax and go after bay pollution from another primary source.
You stand somewhere upstream in the Susquehanna River, pointing your finger at Pennsylvania and New York, accusing them of not doing what you're unwilling to do here in Maryland.
Well, that all sounded good, but a lot of it was nonsense.
The Brown campaign has hammered Hogan in TV ads on women's issues. Hogan reiterated he supports women's reproductive rights, birth control, and would not roll back the law.
I think you should apologize to the women of Maryland for trying to scare them.
Our first strategic goal will be to position Maryland's business climate to be #1 in the nation.
Why haven't you strengthened the business climate? Because it's your policies, it's your regulatory environment.
In his most recent so-called savings plan, he calls for a $450 million cut to school construction. That would set us back years.
There he goes again, confusing the facts.
But you spoke to a group of extreme gun owners and said, don't worry, give me a pass in public, because when I'm governor, I'm going to use executive order to roll back the provisions of the Firearm Safety Act.
Hogan addressed that claim and others after the debate.
It's just a bunch of nonsense, and it's all trying.
No, was it you?
No, I didn't. No, I did not. It's just another attempt to distract people away from the real issues in the campaign.
Brown left immediately after the debate, sending surrogates to meet with reporters.
This is an absolute clear choice. Anthony Brown won this debate. He's ready to be governor today.
Surprisingly, Brown was not questioned about his leadership in the rollout of the failed health benefits exchange. Hogan didn't bring it up either. And we spotted a respected political expert in the audience who said this debate showed why no lieutenant governor has ever won the top spot in Maryland. More on his observations coming up new at 6. Reporting live from the studio, David Collins, WBAL TV 11 News.
All right, David, thank you. And both candidates will face off again this month, this time right here on TV 11. On Saturday, October 18th, our own Jason Newton will moderate a 1-hour debate between Anthony Brown and Larry Hogan. You can see it on WBAL TV, again, October 18th. It starts at 7 p.m. And also listen to it on WBAL News Radio 1090 a.m.
Her question was specific legislation. If there's something that you can get through with both sides working together, if you had something specific, what would it be?
Sure. What we're going to do in our first legislative session, and we'll have a number of items, but we're going to continue to move forward on the expansion of early childhood education, pre-K. We're going to deliver more career technology education into our classrooms. And we are going to have, unlike the $450 million cut to school construction, we're going to have a robust school construction program where we're not raising taxes. We do it within debt affordability. We don't jeopardize our AAA bond rating, and we invest more in schools. Those are some of the specific things that I'll be working on with the General Assembly.
Let's do a couple of 30s here. Mr. Hogan, go ahead.
Well, first of all, almost everything that he just said isn't true. Several newspaper accounts, even one today, was just debunking this entire phony argument of yours that I'm going to cut school construction. I'm not going to cut school construction by 1 penny. I can assure you of that. So you've been running around the state saying it over and over, but nobody in the media and nobody in the general public believes you. Here's the thing. Yeah, I did say I'm going to have to try to play defense because you know what? The people in Maryland are really tired of a monopoly where you can pretty much just do anything you want with no checks and balances. They're looking for real bipartisan common sense solutions, and they're looking for people to come together and work between the parties, because when you have a monopoly, it could be either party, but it happens to be all Democrats here in Maryland, you end up with cronyism, corruption, and bad government. And I think they're looking for balance, and that's why I'm running for governor.
Sir?
Look, the only cronyism that we've really seen in Annapolis was when you were under subpoena investigation, because as the appointments secretary in the previous administration, you were accused of, you were investigated and subpoenaed for hiring state government employees simply because of party affiliation. That's not making progress in Annapolis. That's not partnering with the General Assembly. That's not the kind of proactive leadership that Marylanders deserve.
So I have to respond to that.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, but that was just complete nonsense. So I was credited with appointing the most bipartisan, most inclusive, and most diverse administration in Maryland history. There was a partisan witch hunt that was done by a few Democrats in the legislature, which didn't find a single thing. They made those accusations, but we were completely, they never found one single wrongful termination. But you said you don't like to talk about the past. Why do we have to go back 12 years to something that was found to be discredited? There is a current federal probe into criminal activities and possible fraud on the healthcare website that you are in charge of. And you want to go back and talk about something that was already dismissed 12 years ago?
You know that's not true. Larry.
No, it is true.
No, it isn't. The only talk of a criminal probe is from you during the last 30 days of this campaign.
There are subpoenas that have been issued to find out about the fraud involved in the wasting of $288 million on the website that you're in charge of.
Voters grow tired.
Gentlemen, we're going to keep
They are
going.
tired of it. They're tired of you wasting the money.
Well, President Obama jumped onto the campaign trail over the weekend here in Maryland. He was in Prince George's County for a Get Out the Vote rally with Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown. But before he finished speaking, people began leaving. 11 News reporter David Collins joins us live from the newsroom with more details. And David, is this a symptom of perhaps voter apathy or something more?
Well, according to one political analyst, no. And we also spoke with someone who left early. He blames the early exodus on the Brown campaign's poor organization of the event. But to be fair, when the president comes to any town, his people, not the locals, take control.
I want to be a partner with Anthony Brown in this effort, and we'll make that happen if you vote.
President Barack Obama helping Anthony Brown resolve a final stretch concern, making sure the party faithful shows up at the polls.
A low turnout could cripple Brown on November 4.
But look at this. Perhaps a symptom of voter apathy. Many headed for the exits early. Not even the President of the United States appeared able to command the interest of die-hard Democratic voters to stay until the end. Dan Francis had a VIP ticket and left early too, but for a variety of reasons.
The main thing was it was hot, and I think people wanted to get out of there just to get to their cars and avoid the rush.
Dan had already gotten all the photos he wanted. He listened to Brown and the president for about 15 minutes before deciding he had just had it with the long day.
The bottom line is this had nothing to do with being disrespectful to the president or Mr. Brown.
Definitely not. No, not at all.
Dan blames the Brown campaign for a poorly organized event. He believes it was way overbooked. He recalls astronomical lines which took him 2 hours to get in. Dan says he spent idle hours listening to piped-in music, waiting for the president with no word on whether he was even on his way. Leaving early to get to his car parked a mile and a half away became a hassle too.
Once you got outside, you really couldn't leave. The police wouldn't let you leave until the motorcade had left.
But political analysts believe, despite the early exodus, the rally achieved its purpose, to help Anthony Brown.
Live, local, late breaking. This is a special edition of WBAL TV 11 News, Commitment 2014.
Right now on Election Day, it is all around the country with the possibility of significant power shifts in Washington and obviously right here in Maryland. One thing we know for sure, a new governor is heading to the State House in Annapolis. I guess the question tonight, will he be Republican or Democrat? Because right now the numbers are changing very rapidly. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Donna Hamilton.
And I'm Stan Stovall. Most eyes are on what has been a hotly contested race for governor here in our state. The polls closed about 3 hours ago in Maryland, and here is a look at the latest numbers. With 52% of the precincts reporting, you see the Republican, Larry Hogan, with 52% of the vote. Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown, the Democrat, with 46% of the vote. And Anthony Brown obviously was trying to win his own term as the state's top politician, and as a result, try to become the first African-American governor for the state of Maryland. We have team coverage tonight from all of the key races in Maryland, starting with the race for Maryland governor.
And 11 News reporter Deborah Weiner is live in Annapolis at the Hogan campaign headquarters. And Deborah, I would think the mood there has got to be ecstatic right now.
This is quite a party. I actually have with us right now campaign spokesman Adam Dubitsky. Tell me how you're feeling at this moment.
Oh, we're feeling good. What we're seeing now is that Democrats and independents have joined in Republicans looking to take the state in a different direction. We're not over yet, but what we're seeing is that the numbers that we have so far are outside of what we thought was possible in terms of support. Some big counties have yet to report, but we're feeling very optimistic, and it looks like the state is poised to go in a different direction.
This campaign really had a third-party player, which was Martin O'Malley.
You know, it really did. Martin O'Malley wasn't on the ballot, but clearly what we heard over on, and I think what we're seeing so far in the results tonight, is that people have rejected a third term of Martin O'Malley and Anthony Brown. You know, you can't do it with just Republicans, you can't do it with all the independents, but clearly a lot of Democrats are joining with us and want the state to go in a different direction.
All right, Adam Dubitzky, expecting to see Larry Hogan before midnight?
I expect you to see him before midnight. Nothing yet, but we'll see what happens with the results.
All right, thanks for joining us live. All right, you heard it there. This is quite a night here, not only for the Republicans of Maryland, because this is not a room just of Republicans. There are a lot of Democrats here who decided they wanted Larry Hogan. Back to you guys.
All right, Deborah Weiner at Larry Hogan headquarters, where they're all poised for a possible upset tonight.
Absolutely. And now to the Democrat side, and 11 News reporter David Collins, who joins us live from College Park at Brown campaign headquarters. David.
Well, lots of anticipation here and a little bit of spin going on, and the crowd seems definitely subdued compared to what Deborah Weiner's experiencing down in Annapolis. Now, I'm with Congressman Dutch Ruppersberger right now. And Congressman, will Anthony Brown pull this off?
It's real close. You know, we knew that it was going to be a close race all along. But, you know, whatever we say now, it's all about the last vote at the end. So whether you're talking to Brown or talking to Hogan, they're going to have to be patient until the last vote is counted.
If he could have done anything differently, what would he have done?
Well, in the Baltimore area, I think he could have defined himself a little better through his TV ads. Anthony Brown is a good man. He served in the military. He has experience. I interviewed with him before I decided to endorse him about his commitment to the Baltimore region for infrastructure and things that are important to us. And he gave those commitments. But I think that he was not able to let the people know who he was. Well, one of the first things you do in politics is define yourself with your voters. And I think that he could have, not he, but that his team could have done that a little bit better.
Wow. Wow, what a historic night in Maryland. Thank you all. Thank you all so much. They said it couldn't be done here in Maryland. But together, we did it. These serious problems we face, they aren't Republican problems or Democrat problems. And the only way we're going to solve them is to sit down together, reach across the aisle, and come up with real, bipartisan, common sense solutions to the serious problems that face us. And that's what Marylanders want us to do. So tomorrow, let's turn the page together. Let's put Maryland on a new path. With your help, over the next 4 years, together, we will change Maryland for the better. Thank you all so much. God bless you, and God bless the great state of Maryland.
Joining the annals of history with Bob Ehrlich, Spiro Agnew, and now Larry Hogan, elected governor of Maryland. Doing something his father couldn't do 40 years ago when he ran for governor. Larry Hogan, the victor, saying this is the largest mandate for change in Maryland in 63 years.
An Election Day surprise, certainly for some, as Republican Larry Hogan will be Maryland's next governor.
The Anne Arundel County businessman pulled off a big upset in an overwhelmingly blue state. It wasn't even close. His margin of victory, more than 150,000 votes and 9 percentage points. Hogan becomes just the third Republican elected to the state's top spot in the past 50 years.
Tonight, 11 News reporter David Collins is live in Annapolis looking at the impact the election will have. But we're going to begin with 11 News reporter Deborah Deborah Weiner, who was at the Hogan victory speech overnight and his first press conference as governor-elect today. Deborah?
Stan, I have to tell you, when state troopers knocked on the hotel suite where Larry Hogan was staying here at the Annapolis Western Hotel last night, it hit him. They were knocking on the door to say, "We are now your security detail, governor-elect." He felt that things were going his way in the last couple of weeks, but sure enough, it happened and he became governor-elect of Maryland. Larry Hogan rode high an anti-tax wave in Maryland and made history.
They said it couldn't be done here in Maryland. But together, we did it.
Hogan, who has never held political office before, says he tapped into a frustrated electorate demanding change.
It wasn't easy running that campaign and winning here in Maryland, but that was nothing compared to the challenges that lie ahead.
With the long campaign over, the Annapolis businessman says now the job is to find capable and qualified people for his new administration.
It doesn't matter to me whether you're Republican or Democrat, whether you voted for us or not. We're all going to work together, roll up our sleeves, and work in a bipartisan fashion, reaching across the aisle and trying to come up with bipartisan common sense solutions.
The co-chair of his transition team says there is no plan to clean house in Annapolis.
The tone will be set in the next 2.5 months, and that's what people will remember. And if the tone is negative, it's almost impossible to turn that around.
While the campaign didn't want to talk policy yet, talking taxes, no problem.
We're going to cut spending, and we're going to try to roll back as many of the 40 consecutive tax hikes as we possibly can.
Well, it wasn't just state troopers who knocked on the door of Larry Hogan last night. Governor Ehrlich was here as well and offered advice and offered to help, which in fact he will be doing, as Larry Hogan joins this small fraternity of Republican governors of Maryland. It's a real game changer here in Annapolis and all across the state. Live in Annapolis, Deborah Weiner, WBAL, TV 11 News.
Deborah, thank you. Well, Hogan's ascent to the top spot in the state could mean a big change as to how things get done in Maryland or don't get done with a Republican governor and Democratic majorities in the state legislature. 11 News reporter David Collins continues our team coverage tonight from the State House. David.
Well, Donna, the balance of power is tipping ever so slightly. Republicans gained 7 additional seats here in the House and 2 more in the Senate. Republican Larry Hogan riding a huge wave of voter approval of his economic message into the governor's office. And in his wake, the political landscape at the State House is about to dramatically change. Despite partisan redistricting designed to cut GOP numbers, the House gained an additional 7 Republican seats and 2 more in the Senate.
We now have broken the supermajority in the House. A lot of the things that go on in the House require a supermajority, and now we can block that, and we can promote Larry Hogan's agenda.
Republicans will have more power to make or block procedural moves. It does not mean they have the clout to override vetoes or can muster 85 GOP votes to stop legislation. Political analysts believe the higher Republican numbers will help Hogan's efforts to reorganize state government, successfully push through big cuts in spending, and scale back capital projects.
We won't have any trouble helping Larry Hogan change Maryland.
Out of all the jurisdictions in the state, Baltimore City could be impacted the most. Mayor Stephanie Rollins-Blake plans to reach out to the governor-elect. But at this point, she really doesn't know how the new governor will respond to Baltimore's legislative priorities.
I'm hopeful that we will be able to work together to move the city forward. I think that the city is crucial and vital as a part of the state, and my hope is that we will have some shared priorities that we can work on.
Hogan pledges to create a bipartisan administration. Leaders of Maryland's congressional delegation welcome a team player.
We will work with them in terms of federal partnership. If they want to work together, I'm going to work together.
The great thing about our democratic system, elections give us new faces, new ideas, new ways to moving forward.
Today, Hogan reached out to Speaker Bush and Senate President Mike Miller. He says they both pledged to work with him in a bipartisan way.
Reporting live from Annapolis, David Collins, WBAL TV 11 News.
David, thank you. Well, it was much more than just the governor's race decided on Tuesday. For all of your local results and statewide races and the issues decided, check out WBALTV.com. Click on Commitment 2014.